You will have been married 50 years.
Well, actually, we met 50 years ago this May. We've been married for 48 years.
They said he was a ghost, a figment of Dolly Parton's imagination, a man who spent his life in the shadows while his wife became one of the most famous women in the world. But now, at 79, Dolly has finally broken her silence. And what she reveals? It's heartbreaking. For nearly 60 years, Carl Dean was the mystery man behind the legend. And now, he's gone. How does Dolly go on without him? What was their love story really like? And why did Carl avoid the spotlight for so long? Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind the most private love story in country music history. Carl Dean was a name seldom heard in public and rarely mentioned in press interviews, yet his presence loomed large in Dolly Parton's world. Long before the tabloids tried to paint him as invisible or even mythical, he was simply Carl, a hardworking Tennessee native who valued his privacy above all else. Many fans, fascinated by Dolly's bold personality, her iconic wigs, and her glittering outfits, wondered why they almost never saw this man she called her husband. Gossip columns even ran headlines asking if Carl Dean was real. That speculation only grew as Dolly's fame skyrocketed. But behind the scenes, Carl was very real and very vital to Dolly's life. He was the one who offered her a shoulder to cry on when recording sessions went late into the night. He was the quiet figure in the wings, driving her to the airport, double-checking that she had everything she needed to succeed. While Dolly's face lit up television screens and magazine covers, Carl watched from home, possibly with the volume turned down, smiling with pride at the woman he called his wife. To understand how deeply he influenced Dolly, we must first see who Carl really was. A dedicated man who, from all accounts, had zero interest in stardom or red carpets. Dolly always said Carl found large social gatherings overwhelming. He admired her success, cheered her on, but couldn't bear being in the spotlight himself. While some might find that strange, after all, what man wouldn't want to be part of the glitz and glam? Carl was wholly unique in that regard. He found comfort in solitude, in the daily routines of running his asphalt paving business, and in supporting Dolly's dreams from the sidelines. There's an old saying that behind every successful woman is someone who believes in her unconditionally. For Dolly Parton, that was Carl Dean. Yet the specifics of how he contributed to her success, the private words of encouragement he gave, and the small acts of love he showed her throughout the decades remained largely hidden. Even now, after his passing, Dolly guards many of those details as if they are precious secrets from a life shared in total trust. The world first learned of Carl's death on March 3, 2025. To some observers, this news was shocking, not just because a gentle, constant figure in Dolly's life was gone, but because it was confirmation that he had indeed been real all along, a flesh and blood partner, not some fantasy. Fans around the globe, from Nashville locals who had spotted him around town to international admirers of Dolly's music, reached out in droves to share their sympathy. The quiet pillar of Dolly's life had left this world, and everyone felt the tremors of her heartbreak. Before Dolly Parton was a country music phenomenon, before the Grand Ole Opry recognized her talent, before she was a guest on national talk shows, she was simply an ambitious teenager with a guitar and a dazzling smile. She arrived in Nashville in 1964, with a dream too large to contain in her small hometown. She wanted to sing, to write songs, to be heard. Little did she know that almost immediately, she would meet someone who would change her life forever. It was an unremarkable afternoon by most standards. Dolly stepped out of the wishy-washy laundromat, arms full of clean clothes, and a pickup truck pulled up alongside. In it sat a young man, dark-haired, tall, with kind eyes that sparkled with curiosity. His name was Carl Dean, and he was just as surprised to see her as she was to see him. Accounts differ on exactly who spoke first, but Dolly often remarked with a playful grin that Carl told her she'd get sunburned if she stood out there too long. Perhaps it was a line. Perhaps it was genuine concern. Regardless, that moment sparked an immediate connection neither of them could ignore. From there, the attraction grew rapidly. Dolly was fresh, energetic, and completely fearless about her musical journey. Carl was grounded, hardworking, and quietly confident. They seemed to balance each other perfectly, her vivacious spirit complemented by his calm presence. 2 years after they met, in 1966, they married in a discreet ceremony. Dolly has often joked that the wedding was so private, the biggest spectacle was the wedding cake. While Dolly's career soared from local clubs to major studios, Carl remained content to live his life away from the cameras. Even as Dolly's star was rising, the pair found simple ways to keep their connection strong. They snuck away for late-night drives, grabbed milkshakes in out-of-the-way diners, and spent weekends away from the chaos of Nashville's bustling music scene. For Dolly, these quiet moments of normalcy were precious. Her life on stage was bright and loud, full of rhinestones and applause. But her life with Carl was hushed and intimate, a place where she could take off the wig, let down her hair, and just be Dolly Dean, the young woman who left home with a dream and found love in the most unexpected place. As Dolly's fame escalated, some questioned whether their relationship could survive the distance, the rumors, and the relentless demands of a public life. Whenever Dolly embarked on tours or spent long nights in the studio, she was never truly alone. Carl's presence was with her, if not in person, then in her mind and heart. His steadfast belief in her talent was like a guiding compass, and while he nearly always stayed off camera, he was undeniably part of the world Dolly inhabited, offering quiet, unwavering support. The story of Dolly and Carl was improbable by showbiz standards, where short-lived romances and headline-ready scandals are more common than enduring partnerships. Yet there they were, a teenage dreamer and a humble businessman, forging a bond strong enough to last decades. For a world that loves romance but rarely sees such a private, real love, theirs became almost a legend. Now, with Carl gone, many are left wondering how Dolly can possibly move forward. But to truly grasp the weight of her loss, we must dive deeper into the privacy that defined their life together. From the beginning of their marriage, Carl Dean set a firm boundary. He had no desire to stand in front of cameras or be interviewed by journalists. Dolly respected that wholeheartedly. Instead of pressuring Carl to join her at every event, she learned to navigate red carpets solo. This choice led to some peculiar speculation. People assumed that Dolly's constant appearances without Carl indicated a rift in their marriage. The reality was quite the opposite. According to Dolly, Carl was always waiting at home with a warm embrace when she returned from the chaos of show business. She once mentioned that while she was wearing sequined gowns and greeting fans, Carl was more comfortable in jeans and a plain t-shirt, tinkering in the garage or taking care of household tasks. This arrangement worked for them. Dolly thrived on stage, fueled by the love of an adoring public, while Carl preferred private devotion, quiet evenings in, listening to Dolly strum her guitar in their living room. Yet the public's curiosity only grew stronger because of Carl's elusive nature. The more he avoided cameras, the more people wanted to see him. Paparazzi would try to snap photos when Dolly and Carl went out for dinner or shopped for groceries. But Carl, who was famously camera shy, would often slip away before the shutters could click. On the rare occasions a photograph surfaced, he looked composed, but never overly thrilled. Fame, to him, was an unnecessary intrusion. Over time, their strategies for maintaining privacy became almost an art form. If they went on vacation, they chose remote cabins, quiet beaches, or quaint motel rooms where no paparazzi would think to look. Dolly often laughed about how they stayed at the Days Inn or other budget-friendly spots, content as long as the bed was clean, and the shower worked. With Dolly's widespread recognition, such modest choices reduced their chances of being followed. For her, it wasn't about luxury. It was about carving out pockets of normalcy with the man she loved. Friends who knew Carl described him as witty and caring, a man who could make Dolly laugh until tears streamed down her face. He had a keen sense of humor that matched Dolly's famously sharp wit. Though their personalities appeared opposite, her flamboyance to his introversion, they shared a robust sense of fun and a deep respect for each other's individuality. They also found common ground in business. Dolly might have been a music mogul, but Carl ran his own successful asphalt paving company. They both understood the grind, the hustle, and the pride in honest work. There was a particular rumor that never quite died. Some whispered that Carl Dean didn't exist at all, that Dolly had invented a fictional husband to maintain an image of a stable, down-home marriage. Dolly generally brushed this off. Occasionally, she'd show a photograph or tell a funny anecdote, but she never felt compelled to offer proof. For her, the marriage was real, the love was real, and anyone who doubted that was free to speculate. The truth is that Carl Dean's desire to remain invisible to the press was part of what kept their marriage strong. Dolly often credited their longevity to the fact that they spent plenty of time apart. She traveled for tours while he stayed home, living his life in peace. When she came back, it was a joyful reunion, full of storytelling and genuine appreciation for one another's company. In a world where privacy is scarce, they had managed to build a sanctuary, a place of comfort and trust that would serve them well through numerous trials, including the heartbreak that would one day arrive. March 3rd, 2025 was a day that forever changed Dolly Parton's life. At the age of 82, Carl Dean passed away, leaving behind more than half a century of memories, laughter, and unconditional love. For Dolly, it was as if the foundation that had quietly held her steady in life was suddenly gone. The heartbreak was palpable, made even more profound by the knowledge that she had spent nearly her entire adult life by Carl's side. When the news broke, fans around the world were stunned. Many had only heard whispers of Carl Dean or seen a scattering of photos, yet they recognized how vital he was to Dolly's happiness. Tributes poured in from celebrities, fellow country music stars, and world leaders alike, each acknowledging Carl's role as Dolly's lifelong support system. Flowers and condolence cards flooded her mailbox. Social media lit up with messages of mourning and respect. Despite Carl's preference for staying out of the public eye, his death was felt as a collective sorrow, a reminder of the fragility of true love in a world all too accustomed to fleeting relationships. For Dolly, the immediate aftermath was a swirl of grief and self-reflection. She canceled appearances, withdrew from public engagements, and leaned heavily on close family and a few trusted friends. The woman known for her endless energy and bright smile now faced cameras with puffy eyes and a subdued demeanor, if she appeared at all. She released a short statement thanking everyone for their prayers and support, confirming that Carl had passed, but offering no details about the cause. In keeping with Carl's lifelong desire for privacy, Dolly provided no further explanation. It wasn't the first time Dolly faced hardships. She had endured rumors of affairs, the heartbreak of never having children, and the unrelenting pressure of staying relevant in a cutthroat industry. But losing Carl was a pain unlike anything she had experienced. This was not just her husband, but her confidant, her best friend, the person who had seen her at her highest and lowest, who never judged her for her outlandish stage persona or her ever-growing list of professional achievements. In many ways, Carl's death forced Dolly to confront her own mortality. She was 79 at the time, an age by which many of her contemporaries had retired or passed on themselves. But Dolly had always been a force of nature, still performing, still producing music, still entertaining. Without Carl, would she lose that spark, that magical blend of tenacity and humor? Or would she summon the same resilience that carried her from a small Appalachian cabin to the pinnacle of global stardom? As the days turned into weeks, one thing became clear. Dolly intended to honor Carl's memory by carrying on. She hinted at writing new music inspired by their decades together. Some said she wept at the piano in the quiet hours before dawn, composing lyrics that captured both the sorrow and the gratitude she felt. The world waited to see if she would emerge from this tragedy with a renewed sense of purpose, or if the weight of grief might pull her out of the limelight altogether. Deep in the hearts of her fans, there was hope that Dolly's spirit, that unwavering positivity, would find a way to shine once again. Anyone who's followed Dolly Parton's career knows she's a survivor. Raised in poverty in rural Tennessee, she learned early on how to turn challenges into opportunities. When she first came to Nashville, industry insiders doubted a simple country girl could break through. She proved them wrong. Later, when critics mocked her looks or questioned her talent, Dolly laughed it off and charged forward. Over and over, she has demonstrated an uncanny ability to transform adversity into art, heartbreak into ballads. Losing Carl, however, was an altogether different storm, more intimate and destructive than any she had weathered before. In the weeks after Carl's passing, Dolly openly spoke about her heartache in rare, carefully chosen interviews. She recounted stories of their early days, the mischievous sparkle in his eyes whenever he teased her, the private jokes they shared that no one else would ever fully understand. For Dolly, reliving these memories was both cathartic and painful. She wanted the world to know the man behind the quiet smile, yet she also wanted to keep some pieces of him just for herself. One of the ways Dolly chose to heal was through music. She hinted that she was working on a collection of songs that would pay tribute not just to Carl, but to the universal experience of loving and losing someone so completely entwined with your life. Songwriting had always been Dolly's refuge. She once said she wrote Jolene in just a few hours, pouring her insecurities about a bank teller's flirtations with Carl into a timeless hit. Now, she was channeling the raw grief of losing him into new compositions. Fans speculated about what these songs might sound like. Would they be gentle lullabies, soulful ballads, or defiant anthems about carrying on in the face of heartbreak? In a small but emotional gathering, Dolly's closest friends and family joined her to commemorate Carl's life. According to insiders, Dolly spoke at length, not about Carl's death, but about the beautiful parts of his life, his sense of humor, his unwavering devotion, the quiet ways he showed love. She shared anecdotes that made everyone laugh through tears, painting a picture of a marriage built on the simplest joys. At the end of the evening, she performed a new, unreleased track, a gentle, heartfelt melody that evoked the early days of their love. The room fell silent, the only sound being Dolly's voice, trembling with emotion yet powerful in its sincerity. Still, grief is a long journey, and Dolly is the first to admit she doesn't have all the answers. She often cites her faith as a guiding light, and her belief that Carl is now at peace, watching over her. She says she feels him whenever she sits down to write or whenever she walks by certain parts of their home. The empty chair that used to be Carl's, the smell of coffee at dawn that used to be his morning ritual. These small reminders can bring tears, but they also bring comfort. Another crucial element in Dolly's healing process is her gratitude for the life they shared. Rather than focusing solely on the loss, she chooses to celebrate the decades they had together. She speaks openly about how fortunate she feels to have known such a love. Friends note that Dolly's resilience also stems from her eternal optimism. She can see the silver lining in even the darkest clouds. For her, Carl's passing is a devastating moment, but also an invitation to honor him by continuing to spread the joy and kindness that both of them valued so deeply. Fans speculate whether Dolly might eventually open up more about Carl, perhaps releasing personal letters or never-before-seen photos. Yet, knowing Dolly and her fierce loyalty to Carl's private nature, it's unlikely she'll reveal too much. Her approach is almost certain to be a delicate balance, sharing enough of her story to connect with those who've loved and lost, while preserving the sacred intimacy that defined her marriage. As you reflect on this remarkable story, consider the power of a love that needs no cameras, no paparazzi, no validation beyond the two people in it. Think about the lessons Dolly and Carl's relationship offers about respect, individuality, and standing by someone's side, even when the world beckons you to center stage. And ask yourself, what does it mean to truly support another's dreams without demanding your own share of the spotlight? Tell us what you believe. Can Dolly Parton ever move on from such a profound loss? Or will Carl Dean remain her sole, irreplaceable partner in both life and memory? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your reflections on this private yet legendary marriage, one that touched hearts everywhere without ever needing a spotlight. If you found meaning in this tribute, please like and share this video so others can learn about the man who stood by Dolly Parton for nearly 6 decades. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that look beyond the headlines and into the human side of fame. As you watch that next video, remember the strength of Dolly's spirit, and let it remind you that even in the face of the deepest sorrow, hope and love can guide us forward. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.